Got it.
Okay. And then thank you so much, Representative Baker, for taking time to talk with us today. Representative Baker represents District 72 in Forsyth County and is currently serving her second term. She has spent her entire professional life in service to the community, from being a K-12 administrator to creating initiatives like summer programs and community gardens. She's worked with many stakeholders across our community to ensure that children have year-long learning opportunities, and in her current role, she is committed to the fight for affordable housing, success of small businesses, and of course, better funding for education. So, Representative Baker, again, thank you for being here today. I don't know if there's anything else you want to say about the introduction or add to.
No, I think you covered it all. Just thank you
Okay.
for this opportunity today.
Okay. And so, just thinking about our community and the current shortage of childcare options that we have, what do you think can be done to support early education efforts across our community?
Well, I've been in education for almost 30 years now, and I think that one of the strongest avenues for creating more opportunities for access for all of our families to early educational opportunities is to begin to create partnerships with our businesses, particularly the businesses that can support um, funding universal pre-K. So we've got to think differently about that, and in terms of using taxpayer dollars blended with private dollars to create these accesses. So I really think that universal pre-K is the answer, and helping employers and big businesses to understand that when families have access to quality childcare, that it decreases the number of absences because their employees have somewhere to take their children while they work. I think during COVID, out of necessity, many businesses took the opportunity to create on-site early childhood um, access points. And I think we need to revisit that about making sure that we have daycares in early childhood locations again on the properties of those bigger businesses. But small businesses too could make a small contribution to help defray the costs, because we know that small businesses is one of the strongest revenue generating engines in our local economy.
Hmm. Yeah, because sometimes, it's hard. I know there are a couple of businesses in town that are looking at opening on-site childcare,
Mhm.
but that still doesn't, provide the number of spaces that we need in our community. And so how do we, just create childcare? I agree, that supports the small, the medium, and the large size businesses, and definitely a big supporter of universal pre-K. We've been involved in that from the beginning.
Mhm.
Um, I used to say, when we were talking about universal pre-K, I want universal child care. I want everybody to have access to child care. And so, um, you know,
We
do you have
definitely
it?
We
Go ahead.
definitely, from the legislative standpoint, we definitely need to look at the reimbursement rates for our early childhood centers. Um,
Hmm.
we need to also create standard revenue streams in the budget that will go and assist with offsetting the cost of early childhood access and daycare. But right now we don't have a lot of support for that. And so that's why we have to keep fighting. And my experience has been, when you can tie an issue to what it costs the state not to do it, then we
Hmm.
can start to build more interest and more momentum for that.
Hmm. What do you think it would take to help boost that level of interest at the state level among the legislators?
I think that the businesses that currently are currently housed in the state, began to
Mm-hmm.
talk to us as legislators about this being something that they want to see for continuing to do business here. I think it's conversations that when we're offering them these huge tax breaks to bring their companies here, that we begin to say to them, we need you to understand the commitment to this state. And so I think the only way, I hate to use this as an example because it was such a horrible situation that occurred, but you may remember a couple years ago with House Bill 2, HB 2. And it wasn't
Mm-hmm.
until we started to lose um, conferences, when we lost the um, the basketball tournament, we started to lose many major um, conventions that were coming here. It was about economics. And once
Right.
the legislators that had backed that bill started to see what it was costing the state, then they pulled away. They pulled back from that. And I think that's the same principle that needs to occur now to begin to force all educators, I mean, all legislators to look at this educational issue as an important issue.
Yeah, education, early education, and just education in general. I think we are at a crisis point right now, and so I like that idea of encouraging businesses or helping to support businesses to think about what they can do. And I
Right.
think parents have to also step up, and childcare providers have to be
Absolutely.
involved. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Most of my career was spent in highly impacted schools. I don't call them Title I schools anymore. First of all
Hmm.
schools are not the same. There's different levels of poverty that qualifies you to be a Title I school, but all highly impacted schools are the same in that we don't always have all the resources we need because our parents are working sometimes two, maybe three jobs. The lack of the parental support may look differently in those schools because we don't have strong financial PTAs that can raise or donate or contribute at high rates. Oftentimes we have to think differently about how to get some of the same things for our students at schools that are well funded and have strong PTAs have. And so it was in that vein that I began to look at creating community partnerships to be able to um, leverage that support to get things done in our schools that were done in some of the other schools in our district. And so that's the mindset that I have in terms of looking at an issue that we're confronted with and how we can think differently about getting it done. And so our tax dollars alone are not going to be able to fund these really critical needs in our city and in our county and indeed in our state.
Hmm. Yep, makes sense. Makes sense to me.
Mhm.
So, thinking about we talked a little bit about different ways to do things. Have you ever, other than, thinking about how we encourage businesses, are there any other innovative ideas that you can come up with that would support early education efforts in Forsyth?
I mean, I began to do some research. Like San Antonio, which is way larger than Winston, was able to successfully implement um, universal pre-K and as well as funding their early childhood programs. And so
Mm-hmm.
I am continuing to do my research to find out how those cities that have been able to accomplish this has been successful. And so right now I don't have any other idea to offer,
Mm-hmm.
but I do know that there is strong interest, at least in Forsyth County, and a strong desire to want to do this because some of the businesses contributed or did a promise to pay of raising $20 million over a 5-year period to move forward with this initiative. So um, So I think that we're on the right track with creating
Mhm.
these opportunities for businesses to be able to support this.
Yeah, and if that happened, that would be great. It's still not quite what we need, but it's more than we have now because the county has been very supportive with putting forward the ARPA dollars. The
Mhm.
city put some ARPA funds together, but it's still there needs to be more money attached to the pre-K priority effort in
Yes.
order to be able to serve many more children, um, as well as to, think about how we get more early education teachers to go into the field. Because right now, that's also a challenge, how we keep retain teachers in the field. So,
Well, and if you look at it, although the credentialing process is slightly different for early childhood educators than it is for the K-12 educators, they do require credentialing. So we need to look at them in the same vein as we do K-12 educators
mhm,
and compensate them, at that understanding level. Right now, they are even more severely underpaid than our K-12 teachers. And so
mhm,
we've got to, again, think differently about how do we pay the people who handle our most precious members of our family at a rate that allows them to also pay and take care of and care for their families and not have to work 2 or 3 jobs. So we often have this conversation about the need to raise the level of our K-12 teachers and indeed our support personnel. Um,
mhm.
but we often forget that that conversation should be inclusive of our early childhood um, professionals as well.
Right, right. Yeah, I was on a panel at Goodwill a couple of months ago. Well, I guess it was back in December, and one of the teachers was sharing her story, and it was really, she wanted to stay in the field, but it was like, okay, how much longer can she make it if she has to continue to do all of these different things just to try to make ends meet? And then, how effective can she be in the classroom if she is worried about, how she's going to take care of her own children and pay her bills and buy food. Um, so yeah, I think, thinking about how we better compensate teachers, early educators is really important.
Well,
So, go
that is
ahead.
that is true. And that is something that we are dealing with um, in our profession. And again, um, I started to see it long before we were dealing with it with COVID. And now,
Mm-hmm.
what COVID has done is exacerbated the matter, right? And in North Carolina, it's really unfortunate because we have a multi-billion-dollar surplus um, that we could begin to release those dollars to ensure
Right,
we fully fund public education, that we have the dollars that could provide the increases that we need in education. There has to be a willingness to want to do that. And right now, there's just no interest in that. And when there's talk about and legislation that has been passed to extend our voucher program to people who have the money to pay for
mm-hmm.
children to go to private school, now essentially getting this tax break, um, it just again it is confounding in terms of our ability to continue to draw companies here when we don't fund our educational system, and that is pre-K through college. And
Right.
when we were at the strongest point under Governor Hunt and thought of as the education state, where
Mm-hmm.
we were Smart Start and fully funding our K-12 program, strengthening the funding dollars that went to community colleges, ensuring that our public institutions of higher learning were fully funded. I tell people I lived through that. I came into the profession of that, making sure that professionals who were going back to schools, getting their masters and their doctorates, or pursued national board certification with financial assistance, who also received additional pay. That was a way of, at least in part, a way to ensure that teachers' rate of pay kept up with the cost of living. And yet, we fast forward, 20 plus years,
Mhm.
several governors later, and we, after a 13-year period of defunding public education, now want to fault public education for not keeping up with the trends that was once here, without owning any or accepting any ownership for the deliberate and intentional contributions to the demise of what we now see public education in North Carolina.
Right, I agree with that. My all three of my children went to public school here in North Carolina, got a great education. Of course, they're in their 30s and 40s now, and so they came at the time when education was really important or touted as being important in our state. Now, worry about my grandchildren who are in school now, and if they're getting that same level of experienced teacher that my children had access to. So
Yeah.
I agree
But
with
I
that
what I can
100%.
say, yeah, what I can say is there is some concern about the professionals that are the teachers that are entering the profession now, because they do not get the same kind of professional development opportunities,
Mhm.
same kind of support. And the other drawback is that they are not in buildings with veteran teachers, right? Veteran educators. And I just remember when I entered the field, much of what I learned in the beginning years of me teaching came from the veterans in the building. So even
Right.
beyond education, um, and access to money, there's this whole like area of support that is not available to these young teachers who are still choosing to enter the profession, knowing all the drawbacks. And so I am also quick to say to people, yes, we are in crisis. That is not,
Mhm.
but the hope is that people are still choosing to enter education, and are still educated, I mean, are still excited about educating our next generation. And so we must figure out a way in which to support them, so that we can continue to be strong and thriving. And I tell people I'm an educator who moonlights as a politician. So I stay close to the issue, and even
Mhm.
been out of the building, as an administrator for 4 years, I still talk to my colleagues, I still engage with young teachers, I still volunteer at my grandson's high school, and so I am still very much abreast of many of the issues that we are being faced with in education.
Mhm. That is great, that you are still a part of the system because we definitely need support from legislators like you, who actually have been in on the ground and know how to make things different and make things better for teachers. And I think we're doing the same thing with the pre-K priority, trying to create a system
Mhm,
that will work and help recruit, compensate both the teachers as well as the administrators and childcare programs and provide a good um, start for children in our community.
mhm. And
So
one of the
I
things that I advocated for was like a pre-K clearinghouse. And by that, I mean, right now we're thankful for Smart Start and their ability to accept applications and to help with the screening process and the placement process. But it is very different when you're working within the school system, and then for the offsite childcare facilities. And so what I would love to see is that there is a clearinghouse that assumes the responsibility for all of that, that you
mm,
and that there's equity amongst the money that is used to create these centers and these placements, and then there is an assurance that parents are getting the best possible placement based on an entity that has no direct benefit from the work that they do. Uh,
Mhm, mhm.
Now that's a little out of the box, but it's
It
definitely
is, but it might be what we need to think about things differently, so I agree. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you, Representative Baker. I think that in our conversations, you answered most of the questions that we had. I really appreciate again your taking time to talk with me today. Excited to have you in Raleigh. Um, hopefully, hopefully for many, many more years to come. And look forward to talking with you again. So thank you so much.
thank you.
All right. Have a great afternoon.
All right, you too. Bye bye.
Okay. Bye bye.